If you're listening to this show, there's a good chance you're as big a Dennis Cowan fan as I am. Or maybe not just as big, but close enough. And for purposes of this conversation, you need to know that there is a Kickstarter going on right now, and it's called Graphic Samurai, The Art of Dennis Cowan. This over 300-page art book is being compiled right now by author Michael Stratford, and he sat with Dennis Cowan for over 10 hours of interviews and went through his archives to find some of the coolest comic art you're going to find. I mean, pages from Black Panther, The Question, not to mention the whole co-founding of the Milestone Universe. Maybe we'll see some pages from that Bible in this book. And as I filmed this, you've got about a week to get your pledges in to secure your copy of this art book. You definitely don't want to miss out. So hit the link in the description of this show, or just visit comicsaredope.com/Dennis Cowan art. That's comicsaredope.com/Dennis Cowan art. Well, guys, it seems like we're on a roll here lately. We've got another returning guest to the podcast, and I couldn't be more excited because the last time this person came to the show, I felt like we had to talk about one thing. We were here for one reason. And when you have Joe Illidge on the show and you can't talk Milestone, it's just like, we got to do it. And so now we can. I also have a bone to pick with him, right? Because just before our last appearance, or just after his last appearance on the show, we were there talking Epiphany Engine. And then maybe like 2 days after the episode premieres, this announcement comes out that Joe Illidge is writing the return of the Shadow Cabinet. And I'm like, oh, you couldn't have teased that? You couldn't have said anything? And he's like, nah. So now he gets to say all the things. Please welcome back to the show, Mr. Joe Illidge.
Hey, Brandon, thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming back, man. I guess I'll start with just, same question I've been asking a lot of people, man. How are you?
Thank you for asking. I am on solid ground. For me, the most important thing is I always wake up with a sense of gratitude, and I wanted to focus on the fact that I was healthy, my wife was healthy, we woke up together, our families are in good health. So that's always my grounding, regardless of the turmoil and shakeups of the outside world. And so for me, it was important to communicate to the community and friends that we have to take care of ourselves and take care of our loved ones and our friends, to give ourselves the moment or the day or the amount of time needed to do that, and then proceed, right? And so that was what I gave myself. I gave myself that day, and I wanted to respect the fact that everyone was likely in a state of inhalation, right? And that they needed to exhale. And so, as you know, I've been out there talking about the Shadow Cabinet for months. But yesterday was a day for me to be silent and to respect everyone's needs for a moment of reflection.
For sure. It's funny because, after New York Comic Con, I was just kind of exhausted. And so a few things just kind of fell on the back burner for a little bit. And so when I wrote my newsletter this Tuesday, I just talked about that, like just being tired and, carving out time to rest, or else your body will do it for you. And so I ended the newsletter just saying, like, by the way, it's election day, but just know, like, it's cool. Like, go vote for sure. But after that, like, it's cool to unplug, like, go read some comics, take a nap. Like, you don't have to be plugged into this constant cycle, right? And, they're going to count the votes, and then there will be a new president, and we can deal with that when we need to deal with that. But just get some rest, man. Take care of yourself. And
100%. We are part of a culture that tells us that rest is laziness.
Mm,
that rest is missing an opportunity, that sleep is overrated and overdone. And these things are all false, right? Part of the process. And I remember reading this from Ariana Huffington. This really cinched it for me, is that the brain needs a certain amount of rest for the capacity of imagination. Now, we're in the business of storytelling and narratives. So, imagination is something that is non optional. We have to have it, right? And a tired brain is not going to have the capacity to be creative in a nurturing way, in an exciting way. It's going to be creative in a stressful way, in an exhausted way. And so, rest and reflection and breaks and naps and taking a walk for 15 to 30 minutes, these are all part of the work,
yeah.
right? And so that's very important. It's very important to take the walk in the sun, to eat your food, and actually enjoy the experience of eating food as opposed to inhaling the food fast so you can get back to your emails,
Yeah.
right? So it is important. It's good that you say that. And it's important for us to communicate that to one another as a community.
Yeah. If it certainly feels like even more important advice now, like even after the results, right? There's been a lot of, and I don't know, maybe this is only my fourth election as an adult,
Okay.
but I don't know. It just feels like these just get progressively worse. Like with each election day, it like the day after just feels almost like the day after a bomb dropped. And I don't remember it feeling that way like as a kid. Like I don't remember my parents being like this sort of obsessed with who the president was or like what the direction or what direction the country was going in. It was almost this idea of like, whatever, I gotta do my job every day anyway.
Well, we're in a time of 24-hour bombardment of media and sensory input, right? We are addicted to data. We're addicted to information. And so we are dealing with a different type of environment than the one that you had when you were a kid. It's far
Mm,
more accelerated, right? And insofar as life, what as creatives we do is we're able to take life and put it through a funnel and create. And art is a necessary reflection of that. Art is, in its best form, a challenge to the world, right? The world is not good enough. And art holds a mirror up to the world and challenges notions and challenges rules and challenges rhetoric. And so I'll be honest with you, there were a number of people in my community that I saw, and they felt the ability to create was impacted.
hmm
And for me, I am doubly inspired to create,
mm,
right? I want to do more stories. I want to tell more stories. I have more to communicate with the audience about, because these stories that we create, they're conversations,
mm,
right? So I'm even more inspired than I was last week, than I was on Monday. And so that's part of what gets me up in the morning, right? Start with gratitude, and then always the question, okay, man, what are we doing today?
yeah.
And not what are we doing today as a list that represents drudgery or burden. What are we going to do today as in, I'm excited to live this life?
For sure.
And I am fortunate that I get to live a life in which I collaborate with talented people and create stories to have conversations with the world and to inoculate this world with some ideas, right? And, it goes back to the Dwayne McDuffies and the Brian K. Vaughns and the, the Kelly Sue DeConnicks and the Octavia Butlers and the N.K. Jemisons. It's that these stories are a conversation with the world that needs to be challenged. And there's purpose in that, and there's joy in that, and there's excitement in that. So I'm for all of it, right? And
Yeah,
that's it.
for sure. For sure. Now that I love the piece about sort of art, kind of as artists, you get to sort of create the world that we wish to see, right? Like, I was thinking about this the other day because my phone rang, but it wasn't near me. And so I had to take the call on my watch. And so I'm on my Apple Watch and I'm talking to my mother like this. And I realized, like, when I was a kid, all I wanted was one of those communicator watches like the Power Rangers had.
Yep, yep.
And like, now we have that because somebody else saw that and was like, oh, that's a cool thing. We should do that at some point. And the technology now changes to reflect the things that, we could only dream of, right? We're still waiting for flying cars. They're coming eventually.
Mm, do we really want flying cars, though?
I don't think I do, but
See, that's the thing. It's like flying cars sound like a lot of fun, but once you have the flying cars, you introduce a whole other level of chaos into things. So maybe it's good we didn't get those.
I do still want the floating skateboard like Marty McFly, though.
Well, that's understandable. And I don't think we're necessarily far from that.
Right.
But, to your point, I don't know if we build the worlds that we want. I feel like if we build the worlds that we want, then we would take away the drama. What I think is we build the heroes
Mm,
that the world needs, right? And
yeah.
the heroes are the reflection of the dream,
Mm,
right? And they will save the world or save the communities, and the communities will save the world. So I think we build the heroes that we want, and we build them brick by brick, and part of what we do is we build them through suffering.
yeah. 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 If the hero got his way all the time, he wouldn't be heroic.
He or she or they, exactly, right?
Right.
And you know as we talk more about the shadow cabinet, we'll key into that.
For sure. Yeah. And I was going to pick up on that because, you asked an important question earlier, right? Like you take your time, you rest, inhale, and then say, hey, what are we doing today? And today we are talking about the shadow cabinet because this is you returning to Milestone after what? Like, how long has it been since you've been able to touch a Milestone title?
It has been, I'd say 34, no, 37 years, because I left Milestone, I think it was like 97,
Mm,
right? So 17. Yeah, so more like 27 years. So 27 years, because I left Milestone as a staffer in 1997.
mm,
So coming back, in 2024 and being able to write this big story that is part of the Milestone relaunch,
mm,
I'm not going to lie, it's pretty amazing,
for sure.
to be able to go back home. And it's a different home. I left a 20th century Milestone and I'm returning to a 21st century Milestone. But at the core, the values are the same, the dream is the same, and the ability to have these stories be in sync with our present day world instead of feeling anachronistic, that's the same.
Mm.
So I'm having the time of my life. I'm working with great creators, and we're building a story that I really feel will be a reward for the fans who have really been patient, and will be a fun story for new readers
Mm.
as well, who are going to discover these characters and this world for the first time.
So when the announcement first came out, you started teasing this as the end game of the Milestone universe, right? Like the Avengers end game, not like the end
Yes.
of it, right?
Yes.
And so for me, the first thing that came to mind was like, oh, have we done enough to have like Avengers Endgame level payoffs or investment with like I don't know Milestone 2.0 if that's what we're calling it.
Okay.
Um, we've had what two seasons? So we had Static, Icon, and Rocket. We had Hardware. We did get Blood Syndicate, and then we got another season of Static with Shadows of Dakota. And then we've got I think the most recent thing we had Icon versus Hardware. And we've had like some one shots and some cool things in between as part of anthologies and stuff. Um, but for me, as like a fan, I felt like the world was kind of just beginning, or things were kind of just beginning. And so when I see Endgame, I'm like, oh no, like, are we pulling the plug early? Like, what happened? Um, how would you classify like what we've got going on right now?
Well, let's take the analogy and let's extend it backwards, right? So you get the Avengers Endgame film,
Mm-hmm.
right? You got three Iron Man movies, three Captain America movies, three Thor movies, two Avengers films. Um, you got what? A Spider-Man.
Mm-hmm.
You got a Doctor Strange. I think when you add up all of the things that you got to get to Avengers Endgame and all of the things that you got from the Milestone relaunch to lead to the Shadow Cabinet, I think it's pretty much a one for one list,
Mm.
right? Just so we're clear. For the MCU, it was more of a 10-year, 11-year journey. For Milestone, it was more of a 4-year journey, but we put out material more frequently here in comics than
Mm-hmm.
they do in film. So I feel like it's a one-to-one measurement. And the reason I said that is because Avengers Endgame was the culmination
Mm-hmm.
of that phase of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And what did it do? It closed some doors and it opened new doors, right? And that's what the Shadow Cabinet is going to do. It's going to close some doors for the Milestone universe. It's going to bring all the stories together to a culmination point. And the Shadow Cabinet is a big story with consequences. And it's going to open some new doors, and it's going to reframe and recontextualize people in this world and what this world is.
Mm-hmm. So, full disclosure for the audience, I've read The Shadow Cabinet issue one, and no worries here. I've promised a lot of people, including Joe and DC, that I will spoil nothing. So, no spoilers. But what I will say, or I can confidently say, is that you're right. The Shadow Cabinet does recontextualize some things, and it does seem poised to really uh, shoot us forward into like a new, I don't know if I would say new direction, because who knows, right? We got Bibles and all sorts of stuff. Maybe this has been a direction established for quite some time. But either way, it's like the stuff that you've seen up until this point, if you are a Milestone fan, if you've been following the relaunch, seems to pale in comparison to the stuff that you might see after this or even just through this miniseries. Uh,
Yeah, we're really swinging for the fences with this one. And you know, we have seen some public word about what the basic storyline is, right? So the important thing to know is that this is 6 months after Brainiac invaded Earth and tried to take over the world. And Earth's heroes fought him back, and Brainiac failed. But that invasion attempt had an impact. And so Shadow Cabinet 1 starts 6 months after that invasion. Now, if you're a new reader, there's a page in Shadow Cabinet 1 called Previously in the Milestone Universe, which basically gives you the major beats of the Milestone Universe so that you can jump in. Additionally, it's written in a way, and this was intentional, that you could just jump in. Like, it starts with basically like a James Bond cold open, right? And someone dies, and then it just shoots you forward, right? And the point is to really just not let you go. And at the core of the story is Rocket, right? And Rocket's this 17-year-old superhero who was a sidekick for an alien named Icon. But now, 6 months later, she is the only hero out there. And as the story unfolds, we're going to find out why. And we're going to find out how different people responded to the invasion of Brainiac. How did people with means respond? How did the heroes respond? Right? And so it's this big unfolding of a world through Rocket. And the underlying narrative is Rocket using her digital diary to basically write a letter to her mom, who she hasn't seen in 6 months, because she's out there fighting the fight for good every single day. There's no weekends for Rocket. There's no bathroom breaks. She's not having lunch with friends. She's out there fighting the fight because it needs to be fought. Right?
Yeah.
So that's how we're pulling you in. We're pulling you in through her. And a number of people may know her from the Young Justice cartoon, which is really cool. And a number of people, they're going to meet her for the first time. For the Milestone readers, they've had a relationship with Rocket that goes anywhere from 4 years to, if you're old school Milestone, that goes back to the 90s. And Rocket is my favorite Milestone hero. She may be one of my favorite top 10 superheroes, period. But she's definitely my favorite Milestone hero. So having the opportunity to have her be the spine and the entryway for readers was something that I really enjoyed. And, I want young people to see themselves as heroes, and so for the opportunity to do that was really cool.
Yeah. And so for those who have never read Rocket, I'm not going to spoil OG Milestone for you because we've got these compendiums. You can go out and grab them. As a matter of fact, Volume 4 comes out in February. And then I think there will be one more. But anyway, Rocket, well, she's one of the main characters in the book called Icon. Like that's the whole gag. The book is called Icon, but it's really about her and her journey. And, through some events, she inspires this alien with like Superman-like powers to actually become a hero and become a symbol for those in the community, an icon, if you will. And then, of course, she becomes his sidekick. The first Milestone books that I read were issues of Icon, that first story arc. And you're right. Like, there is something about her, like the voice that she's given, even in those early Icon issues. It's like she's not taking no mess. She is very much sure of who she is, even as, she's allowed space to grow and for her perspectives to change depending on what information she's given. She's a reader. But she very much, like, even now, like 30 years later, I feel like kids reading her or seeing her for the first time very much can see themselves in her. I was going to ask you why you felt it was important to center Rocket as opposed to maybe Static or some other characters. Why was it important for this to be a journey for her specifically?
So it's a number of things, and to go back to what you said about the original Rocket, right? The original Rocket was also a writer.
Hmm.
Her dream was to become a writer. Her North Star was Toni Morrison, right? And so looking at that and bringing that into the present and having this young woman out there being a superhero 24/7 and separated from her mother, the diary and the opportunity to tell her mother what she's going through and at the same time tell the reader, I felt that really spoke to her as a writer.
Hmm.
Yeah. And being able to chronicle her life and life on Earth at this time. I remember back when I worked at Milestone in the 90s, one of my colleagues, Jason Medley, had said something, or he wrote it down, but he basically described her in 10 words. And I don't know if these were his words or he got these words from another source, but I took them as his words. And what he wrote was the soul of a poet, the heart of a warrior.
Hmm.
That's who she is to me, right? Those 10 words tell me who Rocket is. Her real name is Raquel Irvin. And so for me, like that's who she is. She's a writer and she's a fighter.
Hmm.
And when I think about young people today and everything that they have to contend with, I feel like there are poet souls deep in them. There's this story that's being built every day. And every day they've got to go out into the world. And tomorrow it may be more complicated for them.
Hmm.
And next year it may be more complicated for them. And the reality is, when you're a teenager, every day is drama, right?
Yeah.
And so I really thought about those things and how 6 months of this life is having an impact on Rocket, is having an emotional impact on her, and what is it that keeps her going,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Raquel's not just as a character, she's not a stranger to sort of growing up quickly, right? Like that's kind of been her path in both iterations. And this time around, we've got her sort of carrying this superhero weight on her shoulders, right? Because you're saying she's the only one left. Uh, why is Rocket uniquely qualified to handle that type of load?
Because she understands that you cannot just be an observer in this world. You cannot want a better world and say, okay, I'm going to wait for someone else to make the better world. You talk about how she convinced an alien to become a hero, right? This is an alien of wealth and immense superhuman abilities who, for a number of reasons, checked out,
Mm-hmm.
right? And basically live the life of a high priced attorney in a wealthy neighborhood and his big mansion, right? And he meets this young woman from Paris Island, which is not an economically flourishing neighborhood at all, where she lives with her mom. And she compels this alien who's been checked out for like 100, 200 years. She compels him to get off his ass and do something, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in her, deep in her, is the fiber, is the grit, is the understanding that you cannot wait for other people to change the world. And what I will say is this: she believes that her icon experiment failed. And part of the reason that she's out there fighting the fight is the guilt. And these aren't things that have to be said, but these are things that as we read, we will understand, right? She has a different kind of responsibility on her shoulders, and she takes it on. She doesn't run away from it. She's like, okay, I'm hitting the skies every night, and that's it. That's the mission, right? It's basically like, one of my favorite parts from the first Iron Man movie, which I consider, and I think we should all consider, one of the best Marvel Cinematic Universe films, because it was so pure and concise. There's this part where Tony basically tells Pepper, like, there's no more big galas, there's no more meetings, there's no more charity events. There is only the mission, right? That's where Rocket is now.
Mm.
That life that she had before, where she could hang out with friends and stuff like that. School, there is only the mission.
Man, and so when we last saw Rocket, you know what? I'm gonna leave it because I want people to go and read Icon versus Hardware. I want people to read the few years of stuff we've had before. What I will say though is that Rocket very much seems to have been catapulted into a life. This does not feel like a gradual end game type thing for her. It very much feels like, I wouldn't say fish out of water, because I feel like she's handling things well, but it's almost like, dad went out for milk and never came back, and I'm the man of the house now, like type vibes. And I love seeing her in a position where, because Rocket, if there's one thing that I feel like defines her, it's her confidence. And so like to sort of see her maybe not as confident, but still resolved and determined to move forward, it's a nice look on her, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think, one of the things about superhero stories is I feel like it just starts to seem casual for the characters that are out there and doing this. It seems like it's just another day. This isn't casual.
Right.
This weighs down on you. It makes you tired. And when you're in a fight, I won't tell you who said this to me. He's a friend. He's a beloved comic book writer. He is writing one of the most popular characters at Marvel right now, and possibly in American superhero comics. He said to me, I don't think most comic book writers have been in a fight. And I really thought about that. And I was like, I see a lot of these fights and the heroes make it look easy. And I'm like, and you know what? It's not. When you are up close with someone and you are mixing it up, that's not easy. So again, bringing her to the front of the Milestone universe when we bring people into Shadow Cabinet and writing her, I wanted to communicate that for her because I feel like it's that way for women in this world, right? I feel like in a number of ways, women are going into battle every day, right?
Yeah.
And they've got to get in close and mix it up. And so that's something that I wanted to show here, that fighting ain't easy.
Yeah.
And you could just die that day.
Facts.
And that's the way it is.
For sure. So, man, such poignant words, especially this week, right? Um, for those of you watching, we filmed this a week ago. You can guess what happened a week ago. But um, so with Milestone, right?
Mm-hmm.
The when Milestone relaunches with
Yes.
Reggie and Dennis at the helm, they are
Yes.
very clear. In a number of articles or interviews, they're like, "Hey, we're not in the nostalgia business. This is not, let's go play greatest hits, right?" And then even when you look at like sort of the creative rollout, there's always been this. We're going to blend a little bit of the old, right? We'll have a little bit of a taste of what you remember, but we're also doing things in a new way. And we're doing things that we didn't do before, right? So they've always been about sort of bridging this gap between old and new. And with that, I wanted to ask for the old heads or people like me who found the old stuff later, what are the things like that maybe OG Milestone fans will love about this new series, if even if they hadn't really been in on Milestone 2.0?
I think that's a great question. So I would put it to you like this. So when you're dealing with characters, now characters are around for decades, right? Batman was created in 1939. Superman was created in 1938. Wonder Woman was created in 1940. I believe the Fantastic Four was created in 1962.
Mm-hmm.
So to keep these myths potent, you have to adapt them to the times, but they're always the core rules, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so with the Shadow Cabinet, the characters that you're meeting, there are the core rules. There are core rules about Rocket, right? Mm-hmm. And that extends from her introduction in Icon #1 in 1993 to her reintroduction in Icon and Rocket, with which Reginald Hudlin, one of the founders of the new Milestone and one of the Milestone Media producers, wrote, right? So these characters are different and yet familiar. So that's one thing. The second thing is we are introducing new versions of characters from the original Milestone. So there's 2 characters who are introduced in Shadow Cabinet 1, one on page 2 and one on page 30. And so if you know your old school Milestone mythology, you're going to be like, right? Now, if you don't, these characters are fresh to you and they're new. But if you know, that's just an extra level Easter egg for you. And that's for you to understand, oh, this is the 21st century version of that person.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And you can do those kinds of comparisons, and you can be in the fiction in a way that rewards you because you have that OG knowledge.
Right. Yeah, and I'll go as far as to say the Easter eggs don't stop at just what characters you see. There are phrases in this book. There are even like settings, right, that you'll notice, and it's like, oh, okay, and it's very much like if you know, you know, right? But very much fun details to point out or to recognize. Like I always love when you're reading like a Batman comic and they'll name like some random street or bridge after like a previous Batman creator.
Right.
Like, oh, I'm making a right on Spring Street. It's like, aha, I see what you did there.
Exactly. Right? Exactly.
And there's a lot of that in here, but it's not like nostalgia for the sake of nostalgia. It's just, like I said, it's like rewarding the reader, I think is how you put it. That's very much how it feels.
Yeah, like I would, really match it up to what a lot of people are experiencing now who are reading Absolute Batman 1, Absolute Superman 1, Absolute Wonder Woman 1. You're seeing a recalibration of these myths But you're seeing a lot of Easter eggs in these books,
Mm-hmm.
and it gets your attention, and it says, "Oh, I think I know what's coming."
Mm-hmm.
Right? You might be right, you might be wrong, but it's part of the fun, right?
Yeah.
It's part of what immerses you in the story. So that's part of the fun of, getting to write the Shadow Cabinet, is to be able to write on the layers for different people. There's an OG Milestone layer, there's a new Milestone reader layer, and there's a new reader layer,
Mm-hmm.
right? And all of those are inviting, and all of those have their own reward.
Yeah. And I think it's important, right? Like to just to state again, there are new things happening no matter what level of familiarity you have with Milestone, right? Like this isn't a spoiler. It's on the cover. Anansi makes an appearance
Yes,
somehow in this
yes,
series.
yes.
And Anansi, for those who don't know, was a character created for the static animated series. Um, and they did do like a special. They did had a comics appearance what last year, maybe 2 years ago. Uh,
Yeah,
that
last
Charles,
year in 2023, it was Static Team Up Anansi.
yes,
Yes, a one
yeah,
shot.
yes, and it was awesome. Like just seeing him in action. So okay, cool. And my thought when I saw that was, okay, we saw Anansi in a comic. That's cool. And because even that was going on, like I want to say maybe that came right before Shadows of Dakota. And so it was just like, okay, cool. Here's a one-off adventure, but it's not really connected to stuff that's going on or whatever. And so to see Anansi make an appearance in this series, it's like, wait, what? Um, and
Yeah,
then,
yeah,
even getting into more characters, like just seeing the Shadow Cabinet come together, it's like, oh, wait, I remember this. Like, and like you said, it's like, okay, now you're starting to come with these ideas of, okay, well, here's what's maybe this is coming, maybe this isn't. How is this character different from the previous iteration that I've
yep,
seen? It's really cool stuff. But my point is
yeah.
just there's things that we have not seen yet that are happening on these pages.
Definitely. And, one of the other things that is public knowledge is a new character called Angela Alva.
Mm,
And so you have Rocket's story on one side, and you have Angela Alva's story on the other. And everyone else is caught in the orbit of those two journeys. So you have Rocket, who's a 17-year-old girl, and you have Angela Alva, who's a woman in her 60s,
mm,
right? And they are on two very specific journeys. And as time goes by and you really start unraveling who they are, then we really get into what the deeper story is. What is the common theme that connects Rocket and Angela Alva, even though they're literally a generation apart? Angela Alva was born in the late 60s,
mm.
right? And so being able to introduce a character like Angela Alva, who through her actions changes a lot of things for people, that's pretty fun to do. That's fun and that's cool. And, you know, I think you always need that. I think whether it's a first issue or whether it's a 12th issue, right?
Mhm.
You need these people who are going to come in and they're going to shake up the status quo, right? Because the status quo is quiet
Mhm.
and it's unsatisfying, right?
Yeah.
And that's one thing that Rocket and Angela Alva both have in common is they're not satisfied with the world as it is,
Mhm.
you know?
Yeah. So, um, I wanted to ask this because, right, like, and the last time you were on the show, we talked at great lengths about like just sort of what milestone means and has meant to you. Um,
Right.
right, like it. it's where you got your start. It's even before you got started, like what inspired you to say, okay, I gotta like be a part of this thing in comics. And now 30 years later, an Inkpot Award later, like your contributions to this medium are cemented, are plentiful, and they're continuing, right? And this year, or I guess even just going into next year, feels like, I wouldn't call it a resurgence, but it definitely feels like a creative renaissance for you, like, if you will. Like, there is something has called you back to the table. Like, all right, I'm going to put these stories out in the world after a period of like editing other people's stories and being instrumental in other stories. Why was it important for you to tell this story with the Shadow Cabinet?
So, there's a number of things. Number one, and I'm going to do another geek moment, and I'm going to cite Christopher Nolan's The Dark Knight, right? There's a whole monologue by Batman at the end, and he says sometimes people deserve to have their faith rewarded.
Hmm.
And the Milestone fans have not had a new Milestone book in over a year. The last book they had was Icon versus Hardware. And the talks and the development of Shadow Cabinet have been happening behind the scenes for over a year.
Hmm.
And so it's my responsibility to recognize that those people have been waiting, and what they get cannot be casual. It cannot be a story that does not have impact, that does not have drama, that does not have characters that we put through the ringer before they get to the other side, if they make it to the other side. So there's that, understanding that responsibility to them. In a larger context, Milestone is very much needed. And it's similar to this conversation about superhero fatigue in cinema. There's no such thing as genre fatigue. There's only mediocrity fatigue. Just so we're clear,
Mm-hmm.
right? People will take unlimited doses of any genre if they are always presented with quality. Now, dips are natural and ebb and flow is natural, right? And we don't want to be fair weather friends to these organizations and these collections of people who have given us some amazing stories. But Milestone is needed. And, for the creative team, that's myself, artist Daryl Banks and Adagun, Ilhan, colorist Chris Sotomayor, letterer Justin Birch from Ann World Design, Dennis Cowan, Prentice Rollins, John Stanisi, Nicholas Draper Ivy, who's just like, that guy is a force.
Mm-hmm.
He is a force in human skin and bone. And, we recognize that this has to fire on all cylinders. Because to keep it real for the fans, DC is looking at how the Shadow Cabinet performs to determine what the future of Milestone looks like.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And that's part of something which I don't think people really think about. I don't think they think about the stakes of it like that.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I think there's this belief that you put it out so you can just keep putting it out. Well, our stories are governed by businesses, by companies that are owned by much larger companies, and the stakes are sales, engagement, and community.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so with Shadow Cabinet, not only is it opening new doors for the characters, but our hope is that it opens new doors for Milestone.
Mm-hmm.
And that this big swing can lead to a future of bigger swings. Right? Because we can't take it for granted that people are always coming back. And there are some comic books you read, and I feel like they're handled as if they automatically expect you to come back.
Mm-hmm.
But there are some that compel you to come back, right? That is like, I'm grabbing you by the arm and I'm going to see you in 30 days.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so that's what the Shadow Cabinet has to do. Right. And so that's the importance. The importance is that Milestone must continue and be around for future generations. And this story is an invitation to the OG Milestone heads, the new Milestone heads, and to new readers to come on board for a ride. And we have to make it a good ride, right? We have to be thoughtful about it. And I'm confident that what everyone's going to see in this book is that everyone who's involved in the book, like, really went in 105% and put both feet on the ground with it. Yeah. So that's it. So, it's fun, but it's fun with stakes.
Mm-hmm.
That's just real,
Yeah, man. No, that's life. But no, I totally get what you're saying, right? Like I mean, my audience sees it every week because I do a show called The Pull List. And so you'll see,
Mm-hmm.
I tell you why I'm buying this book. Sometimes I'm really excited about a book. Sometimes I'm buying it because I don't want a broken run, right? And sometimes I can't really justify it. So, all right, I gotta cut this, right? Because I have a budget, I have a limited money to spend, and I want to enjoy all $5 I'm spending for whatever book it is at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So, what I will say is that Shadow Cabinet, number one, more than earns the money you pay for it, and more than earns the return trip to the store for issue 2. And I am very much excited to get the rest of this series in my hands.
Thank you very much. We really appreciate that because that's real. It's like comic books cost on average $5, right? And what's really cool is that DC and Milestone really supported the big swing of Shadow Cabinet by making every issue of Shadow Cabinet 30 pages.
Mm.
Now think about that. The average monthly comic is 20 to 22 pages.
Yeah.
Right? This is an extra like 25%, right? On top of that. So each issue is really packed. And I, feel like our story, it keeps you moving. It's kind of like when you watch the Fast and the Furious and the way those films are edited, those films do not leave any fat.
Mm-hmm.
They start off with a cold open and then it's like, let's go, let's go, let's go, let's go. Right. And there's different types of action. There's kinetic action and there's character action. Right. Mm-hmm. So there's a conversation that Rocket has with someone in this story. You know who it is, Brandon.
Mm-hmm.
That's a very important conversation.
Yeah.
That propels things forward. Right. And that's a character action moment, but it's to draw you in and make you care, because the worst thing is for you to close the book and there was no one in that story that you gave a damn about.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's the thing, that's part of what we're doing. I think it's also fun to be able to deal with the impact of Brainiac in the Milestone universe.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to see a little bit of what the aftermath of a Brainiac invasion looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And so to be able to work with a popular Superman villain.
Yeah.
And if you really know the DC universe, you can actually connect this back to House of Brainiac.
Mm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Because there are Brainiacs throughout the multiverse. And one of them is ours.
Yeah.
And another thing, and I think this is really important, and this is something that, DC was kind enough to let me make a personal statement to retailers when they sent out the emails. I've since shared that personal statement on Facebook, but to really distill it down is, again, going back to superhero fatigue. Let's bring that into comics. I don't think there's superhero fatigue, but I think people are tired of the stories that didn't matter.
Yeah.
Right? It's like you invest in this story, it happens, then another story comes, that happens, then another one, then another one, then another one. What the Shadow Cabinet does is it tells you all of the stories mattered.
Mm-hmm.
And the last big event that you read, Icon versus Hardware, really mattered.
Mm.
And our characters are impacted by that. And so when you see them 6 months later, they're not exactly how you knew them before. Because we wouldn't be if an alien artificial intelligence came to lay waste to the planet.
Right.
And we survived that day. That would impact us, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned Static. So there's a teensy tiny cameo of Static in 1, and Static returns in a major way in 2.
Mm.
And he's not the same kid that you left in Icon versus Hardware, right? And so he is also quite important to this story. And I won't tell you how, but starting with issue 2, it starts to become a little bit clear.
Nice.
And more so as you go. And so that's the thing. It's like all the stories that the people have been reading mattered. And that was a way to distinguish Shadow Cabinet from various events from various publishers. And also that it's the kind of story, the way I succinctly described it to the retailers was that the Shadow Cabinet is the Kingdom Come of the Milestone Universe, right? Kingdom Come is a story that you can read in and of itself, and it's evergreen enough that you could read it 5 years later, you could read it 10 years later. So in crafting this story, that was important to make something that the team and I felt could have that kind of capacity. And when I look at the kind of comic book stories that inspired me in writing this, because of its scale and because of its structure and because of how it approaches characters in a very naturalistic way versus a way that you may be used to seeing them in the superhero genre, I would cite works like, I mentioned Kingdom Come. I would have to cite The Golden Age by James Robinson and Paul Smith, and that 4-issue storyline with the Justice Society of America after World War II ended. I would have to cite Civil War, Mark Millar and Steve Niven, the original Civil War series. Those are some of the influences, And if I want to get, I don't know, geeky on a whole other level, I could cite the very first Transformers animated movie from 1986. Right? So those are the things that I was really vibing off of in terms of how we portray characters, how we deal with consequences, and how we're building towards something large and something of impact.
Nice. It's definitely impactful. And this is the time where I have to plug things, right? So Milestone Universe, The Shadow Cabinet, issue 1 is out as you're watching this next Wednesday. That's November 20th. There are 3 covers that you can choose from. The A cover is by a friend of the channel, Dennis Cowan, with inks by, looks like Prentice Rollins on that.
The first issue, inks by John Stanisi.
Okay. And Chris Sotomayor colors that. The cover B is by the other friend of the channel, Nicholas Draper Ivy. I love that cover.
Oh my God. I mean, I remember, you know, so there are a lot of things that are cool about working with Nicholas, but one of them is out of nowhere, he would just DM me on Facebook and show me this thing in stages.
Hmm.
And I would just be losing my mind every time as it builds. And the thoughtfulness of that first issue cover that he did,
Hmm.
and how you can really get a sense of his artistic influences, but then see him flex in
Hmm.
different ways is just great. So, when we announced Shadow Cabinet, we did a soft announcement at San Diego Comic-Con during my career spotlight panel. It was awesome to be able to show that cover.
It's a great cover.
Yeah, 100%.
I keep teasing him though because I'm like, why does Anansi look like you? But and then the C cover is by Sean Murphy or Sean Gordon Murphy, as we call him online for whatever reason.
Yep,
Um, and it's like a throwback to those cards that came with the original series issue ones for Milestone.
100%. Yeah, yeah. It has that feel of the 1993 backing boards
Yes.
for the polybagged editions of Icon number one, Blood Syndicate number one, Hardware number one, Static number one. And when you talk about like getting a cover by Sean Gordon Murphy, Mr. Batman, White Knight, Mr.
Hmm.
Zorro, on your first issue, I'm just like, for real?
Right.
All
Right.
right. That's awesome. And then Dave Stewart, who was one of the best colorists in comics,
Man.
just did an amazing job on that. And so, that's also an indication of the big swing we're taking with this series, right? That you're getting 3 covers from high caliber artists, 3 different styles, right? Is
Mhm.
like, that's part of the fun.
And what I love about those covers is DC made them all open order covers. So it's no
Yep.
ratios. You don't have to worry about going into your shop. Like, I mean, maybe your shop didn't order all three, right? Because you didn't tell them to before final order cutoff.
And
But,
shame on them if they didn't order all 3. But
right,
we totally get it.
right. But, moving forward, my presumption is that they're all going to be open order covers. And that's great for a collector like me, because I'll go to a shop and blow half my budget in a week on the ratio variant. So 1 in
Right.
25 is $25 to $30, sometimes even more.
Right.
Like, God forbid you get to the shop the day after the
Oof.
release
Come
and the
on.
prices have already gone up to match eBay.
Yep.
So I'm excited. All mine will be waiting for me in the box. Um, I need some of these in poster form, but we'll see what DC
100,
does.
100%. I feel like Dennis's cover is so, no pun intended, iconic.
Hmm.
I mean, Nicholas's cover is just beautifully illustrative. And Sean Gordon Murphy is like, listen, that's one of a kind.
Right, right,
That is one of a kind. That is someone of his caliber and positioning in comics. You know, that's his entry piece
hmm,
into the Milestone superhero universe. So, it's wild. There are people who, there's the one cover that they love. There are people who get all 3. And I feel like for the latter, you get that reward because they're 3 entirely different visual experiences.
for sure. And real quick, right? So, uh, we talked a lot about your writing, of course, but the art in this book is tremendous, right? And so I met Daryl Banks for the first time, what, 2 years ago? It was while the Icon, I think it was Icon verse, no, it was Icon and Rocket that was coming out, and they
Mm-hmm.
were doing the classic covers as ratios, and
Yes.
Daryl Banks does
Yes.
a Green Lantern homage with the '70s variant for issue number 3. And
Yeah.
so I went to Heroes Con in Charlotte, and at the time I didn't have a copy of that issue. Like my shop didn't order enough to get the ratio, and that book had skyrocketed. It was like $100 book. And anyway, so I go up to him and he's got a copy in his portfolio. And I'm like, "Oh, are you selling this?" Like, and he's like, "No, this is just my copy just to show people that, I'm good at art, but I only have this one copy, so it's mine." And but we're talking about Milestone. And he's talking about how like, yeah, like I really wanted to work with those guys, but it just never happened in the original iteration. And so he was just talking about how great he felt about being able to come back and do work in the Milestone universe. And we've seen him do work in Milestone in this 2.0 iteration, but this is now him kind of fronting a book. And I am very, very excited to see him flex.
Yeah, yeah. No, listen. Any comic book writer, graphic novel writer can tell you this. You know, when you get new pages in your inbox, it just makes your day better. If you've had a bad day, your day's better. If you've had a good day, now it's amazing.
Right.
Right. And so, Daryl and I have known each other for almost all of my career, back to when he was drawing Green Lantern, because he is the co-creator of the Kyle Rayner Green Lantern.
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel like I've always wanted to work with him, but there was no way to figure it out. And so when Marquise Draper, who's the editor of the Shadow Cabinet, mentioned him, I was like, automatic yes.
Yeah.
I was like, that's not even a question mark. And then, bringing in the second artist, which is Adagun Ilhan, who is one of the graduates of the Milestone Initiative.
Mm-hmm.
And he's done work on a number of DC books, including Poison Ivy. And his Poison Ivy pages are what really sold me on him. And so, being able to work with both artists on the Shadow Cabinet speaks to, the promise of Milestone to be a multi-generational company, right? And I think this is something that you can agree with, is that the way both artists take on this story is very structurally intentional.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
These decisions that were made were not made willy-nilly. We were really thoughtful about it.
Mm-hmm.
So being able to work with Daryl and Adagun and their different perspectives, their different approaches to storytelling. I mean, straight up, Daryl Banks is one of the best storytellers in comics, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, not just of a page, but of two pages together,
mm-hmm.
of how he handles page turns. Because for myself as a writer, I have to be cognizant of a page turn. So I don't want a big reveal on a right side facing page. I want you to turn the page right for the big reveal. But when he draws, when he designs, when he does a storytelling, he's taking all those things into consideration.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So this is a guy that knows his craft. And Adagun brings a sense of imagination and these daring layouts.
Yes.
Right? Like the all I'm just gonna say is Anansi, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yes.
Like let's go, man.
Yeah.
Right?
No.
Like, even if you don't know who he is, when you meet him in the story, you're like, who is this dude?
Absolutely.
Right?
It's like I don't know what he
like. Who is it? Because he's just, let's go.
It's like when you're a kid and like you're watching, I don't know, Power Rangers or whatever it is, right? And you see that one, right? Like it's like when you saw the Green Ranger for the first time, and all the rest of the Rangers have like their normal little outfits. He's got like the little thing on his little shoulder pads or whatever. He's playing the knife flute somehow, right?
Yeah.
And it's just like, I don't know who that guy is, but he is now my favorite. It's very much like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's also something we wanted to do. It's like every introduction to a character will pull you in while telling you something about them.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, yeah, this Shadow Cabinet, which has Anansi as a part of it, I thought that was a great opportunity. Number one, I think it's great that Milestone and DC brought the character of Anansi from the Static Shock cartoon into the books.
Mm-hmm.
And the Static Team Up Anansi book that Evan Narcisse and Charles Stewart and Jose Marzan Jr. and Luis Guerrero and I think Ann World Design lettered it. I think Ann World
Mm.
Design handles the lettering for the entire Milestone universe of books. That was just a really good introduction. And so for me, it was important to say, okay, what is this guy like when you first meet him?
Mm.
Right? What makes him different? And action is character and talking is character and perspective is character. So, and I think we pulled this off that as soon as you meet Anansi and you just go in, he sets himself apart as a
Yeah.
character from anybody else in the story, right? And
Yeah.
and so, you know, there's a lot of fun character introductions that
Nice.
that we really dig, and so people will get a kick out of that.
Nice. So I got a shout out and then a final question for you. So,
Okay.
uh, you mentioned Marquise Draper,
Yes.
editor for this series. And just quiet as kept, he might be my favorite editor in comics right now. Like that kid is I can't call him a kid. I don't even know how old that man is, but he is putting together like these banger books. And so like to watch him go from doing these, DC Power anthologies and like sort of one-off books like Cyborg, and now up to this and to Black Lightning and other
Mm-hmm.
things that he's got in the works.
Mm-hmm.
Like that man knows how to assemble a team and really make a book exciting in a way, right? Like if editorial like does what they're doing right, like nobody really cares. Nobody's like thinking, oh man, that must have been a great editor to put this together. It's just like,
Right.
oh, it's a great story, right? But man, of the thankless jobs, like this man is doing the Lord's work. So I just had to shout out Marquise.
Yeah. Yeah. Listen, it's really a lot of fun working with him. I say team shadow cabinet, a lot in social media, and I mean that, right? Like we are a team, and sometimes there'll be these email chains where it's all of us in there. It's all of us, and Reggie Hudlin and Dennis are in there, and art is going back and forth. And it's almost like a studio,
Hmm.
right? It's almost like this digital studio, and someone drops some newspaper, like, oh man, someone drops this, oh man. So it really is Team Shadow Cabinet. And Marquise is a part of that. And listen, editing is the invisible art. As you said, it's something that people don't notice. I think, but the fans are getting smarter in the
Hmm.
sense that I think they're able to start perceiving editorial identity
Hmm.
in books, right? As someone who's edited for a long time, and I still do freelance editing for private clients and creators, I feel like you could leave off the editorial credits and I could tell you a book that's done by a certain person,
Hmm.
right? This certain person edited that. I feel like the first person I was able to tell that with was former editor in chief of Marvel, Axel Alonso. When he edited a book at Vertigo, you knew that was an Axel book.
Hmm.
When he started editing at Marvel, he's like, that's an Axel book, right? Similar to a friend of mine, Will Dennis at Distillery. You know what a Will Dennis edited book is. So I agree that Marquise is really carving his area of the DC universe. And so working with him has been a lot of fun. You mentioned Black Lightning, number one, which is part of DC's All In initiative.
Hmm.
Everyone go get Black Lightning number one. Go get that book.
Yeah.
It's a very thoughtful, smart book. Go get that. And it was written by Brandon Thomas, who wrote Hardware Season 1.
Yes.
And something that I bet you picked up is Hardware Season 1 is very important to Shadow Cabinet.
Yes. Very much
And
so.
as you keep going, even more so. right? It's
Mm-hmm.
like all those stories mattered, but some of them matter very specifically. And
Mm-hmm.
Hardware Season 1 is one of those.
Yeah. 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 Go pick up Black Lightning. It's already in stores by the time you're listening to this. It's great.
100%.
It's great. Um, so the last question I've got for you. So, because last time we met, you didn't have an Inkpot Award sitting behind you, right? That's new.
Yeah.
And so, and I don't know a ton about Inkpot Awards, right? Like the way I view it is almost like a lifetime achievement award or like a Hall of Fame, like Rock and Roll Hall of Fame for comics. The only other time I've seen an Inkpot Award was going back and watching old footage of like the Milestone. I think it was the 20th anniversary panel at San
Mm,
Diego.
mm.
And all the OG Milestone founders got Inkpot Awards. And of course, Dwayne's was posthumous. Um,
Yes, yes.
but they got those, and I was like, oh, those are cool, right?
Yeah.
So now you're in the club. You've got this Inkpot Award. Your career is still very much active. Have you stopped at all to sort of receive those flowers or think about what your career up until this point has meant?
Yeah, that's a great question. And thank you for your kind words. I definitely have. It's part of my whole, you know, belief in gratitude. I was blown away when I received it. Anyone who has watched my career spotlight panel video on YouTube saw me receive it,
Hmm.
right? Before we got into, the origin and the journey of my career. And we had, the first founder of Milestone, Dennis Cowan, was there as a guest panelist. So it was it was really heartwarming to receive it. And I really believe in the mission of comics. I believe that comics is an art form unlike any other storytelling art form in our world. I consider it superior to a lot of storytelling mediums for a number of reasons. And so, getting a Lifetime Achievement Award for the 31 years that I've been in comics and publishing, is really amazing. I sit alongside so many great peers. You mentioned the Milestone founders, Don McGregor, who is one of the most influential writers of Black Panther forever and ever. Amen.
Hmm.
Joe Duffy, legendary writer, legendary editor. So yeah, I do take the time to appreciate it, and I'm a workaholic. I mean, that's just a fact. Part of it is I love what I do. I'm fortunate enough to, make a living doing what I love. And for me, it's exciting because to me, my entire career has been a warm up for now. And part of the reason that I have taken on this new era in my career with writing at the front is because I feel like I've lived long enough that it's time for me to be out there on the front lines with the writers, people that I've been shepherding and nurturing throughout the years. And I I have the capability to say the things I want to say while taking everyone on a fun ride,
Right.
right? Because we don't want these to be polemics. They're supposed to be high stakes adventures, but within the high stakes adventures, there's a conversation with the reader that's happening. There's a conversation with the fans. And so I'm thankful, and I am thankful every day. And I feel like I have to live up to that. I
Mm.
have to live up to that award. And so my lifetime is not over. My time in comics isn't over. It has been basically given a jolt of adrenaline. Shadow Cabinet is going to represent that. 2025, 2026, 2027. It's like this train is not stopping. You will probably have time for a bathroom break here and there,
Hmm.
but we're just going to keep going and going and continuing to have, you know, the ride of a lifetime.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, look, we've spoken a lot of gratitude on this episode, and I'm very much grateful for you coming to spend some more time over here in the Comics Are Dope studio and speaking with me and the audience. I really appreciate it, man.
Thank you very much. And congratulations to you. Is this your fourth anniversary?
Yes, as we film this, it's the fourth anniversary of this channel.
That's awesome. Well, congratulations.
Thank you,
Thank you for continuing to remind us the comics are dope and why. And it's great to be able to just, have these conversations about these things that we love. And sometimes they really, get us through some storms.
for sure, for sure. I'm grateful to be able to do it, uh, especially be able to speak to people like yourself. It's just kind of icing on the cake. Makes all the long hours and stuff worth it. And really being able to see like other people connect with stories for the first time because we gave them a spotlight here. So I'm excited to continue doing this work. The chant went off in my comments 4 more years, so I'm gonna give it the people what they want.
That's it. That's it.
Right. Well, look, man, thank you again for your time. You guys out there listening, please go pick up Shadow Cabinet #1 this Wednesday. You won't regret it. I like literally this book thrusts you into the action, right? You get to page 3, you're gonna get to page 30, and you're gonna be mad that it's over, right? You got to wait another month for the next issue. So definitely go pick that up. I'm picking up all 3 covers. I won't say you have to do that, but you definitely need one. So after you do that, go out there, stay safe, stay awesome, and read something dope today. Peace.